G'day, welcome to Lunch Money. We are the online and social media home for special situations, workouts and capital raising professionals. My name is Nick Samios. I'm the fund manager and director here at Hermes Capital, and I am your Lunch Money host. So once again, a very warm welcome. Our focus today is we're going to be playing Executive Suite Moneyball or Executive Suite Super Coach, take your pick. We're going to be talking about special situations, be they turnarounds or mergers and acquisitions, and getting the executive team right so that those turnaround efforts or M&A efforts get the best results. We've got a couple of special guests that will help us walk through the discussion today, and we're going to start off by introducing our first guest, Bryan Hughes. G'day, Bryan. How are you going?
Good morning or good afternoon.
Bryan is the chairman of Pitcher Partners. He's corporate advisory, corporate finance, restructuring and turnaround specialist. What sort of stuff's been keeping you busy lately, Bryan?
Yeah, we were having a bit of a chat prior to going live, and I was saying to Nick how it is in a little bubble over here in WA. We have gold at record highs. We've got iron ore at almost record highs, and that's fueling the whole mining services space. So that flows through the rest of the economy. So it's a very strange, surreal world that WA is in. When you look at the rest of the global economy.
I'm actually going to have to get you to vouch for the fact that I am a native-born West Australian, so that I can return home. So we'll see what we can do about that.
You'll have trouble finding a house to live in. There's lowest vacancy rates in 12 years in Perth for rentals at the moment because everybody's repatriated back here.
Well, why wouldn't you? Why wouldn't you? Repatriation and then secession, but that's another story. And so, there's not. What about in the insolvency space? Is there much of that crossing your desk at the moment?
It's actually been quiet, not surprisingly, because there is a bit of a boom on in some sectors. But part of that's the same as for the rest of the country in terms of the government measures, stimulus packages, JobKeeper and the likes have worked. So, the changes in legislation, all of those things have pushed it down the road. There'll be some sectors where the pain will eventually come home to roost. But look, it's so WA is always in its own little world. So it's very hard to read from here as to where it goes. But with the level of economic activity currently happening, there's always going to be some fallout from that as well.
So I guess what the price of a long Mac top up? What are those coffees that you have? Those weird coffees, long Mac top up.
Cost base is still pretty low, so I think we got our coffee culture from Melbourne, mate. I think so.
Oh.
I'm blaming the Eastern Seaboard.
I guess sort of just outside of the insolvency space, there's a fair bit of capital raising going on, IPOs and that sort of stuff in WA.
Yeah, lots. It really has been good times for the corporate lawyers. There's been a lot of money raised on the stock exchange. I think most raised other than the US, but certainly in a number of transactions, Australia is leading. So the world. So it's been really quite phenomenal. And
is that mines or mining services?
Yeah, look, I think I saw one of the medical marijuana companies put away $40-odd million yesterday.
Right.
Across the board, basically.
And people are fairly upbeat in Perth. In Melbourne, they're having a terrible time, and actual personal mental health is a serious issue. But I guess apart from dealing with Clive Palmer, you guys are a lot more upbeat.
Which has actually been quite entertaining. The West Australian, I mean, the conduct of the West is appalling, but the photos on the front page have been sort of, you can't not laugh at them. Yeah. Oh, look, there are some worrying signs, to be honest, mate. When you have a government changing the law to prevent a piece of litigation, I mean, that's sort of political risk. It does not enhance your investment profile internationally. I worry about it. And then, of course, we've recently had in the last week as well, the government saying that on-field gas suppliers cannot export their product. Again, government interventions that have quite a significant impact. So,
why can't they export their products?
Because we want to keep the gas in WA so that we're not paying too much. Because we export so much of it off, we have to pay too much for it to keep it here. And it's the government saying it's our gas, but it's worrying because the oil and gas sector has been, a huge assistance to the WA economy for decades, invested billions and billions of dollars into the state, and now, of course, is going through a very, very tough time, and they don't need hits from governments. So.
Well, I mean, you look. I mean, there's all that job creation. In our space, we tend not to get to deal directly with the miners, but we deal with a lot of mining services, of course. And we've had clients that have, worked on the ocean floor, in the oil and gas space and all of that. Okay, look, Bryan, we'll just put you back in the waiting room there, and we'll introduce our next guest, Deanne Tindale. G'day, Deanne. How are you?
Hi, Nick. How are you? Great to see you.
Very well indeed. Deanne is the CEO of DreamVast Executive Search, specialising in transformation and turnaround executives for private equity. So this is a very interesting niche that you've got carved out. You've been doing that for some time?
Yeah, I have. I've been in recruitment for 25 years, and I've been doing the PE and probably special sits in particular for the last decade.
Yeah. And what sort of stuff's been crossing your desk the last little while?
Well, it's interesting because I think, as Bryan said earlier, insolvencies are down, M&A is down. As long as that government support is there, there's not a real burning platform for a lot of PE investment at this stage. So I think the deal flow has slowed considerably. We're expecting, of course, a lot more of that, come March next year. But at the moment, in WA, it is busy, and it's the mining that's keeping us up. Mining services, I'm doing a couple of roles in mining services and small miners, and that's the local stuff. PE is a bit quieter, but it'll come.
Yeah, and do the roles that you get involved with, are they interim roles or permanent roles, or a mixture of both?
No, it's permanent roles. Certainly, as I said, in the mining space at the moment, a COO role, a CEO role, and whether they're private, small ASX or PE held. The next 3 years are going to be tough for anybody. So if you haven't done this kind of stuff before, you need somebody who does. And particularly in the PE space, when they've got to buy it, they're going to be looking for somebody who could do significant turnaround. You don't want a first-time CEO doing that.
Just say, since COVID hit, let's say, we draw a line there. What's been the most common phone call you've had? Where people have rung up, and what would be the most common out of the blue question you'd get?
The most common the most common call that I'm getting right now is, I've lost my job, and any chance of helping me out here? What can I do to get into it? PE is always going to be busy, whether it's up or down. I deal with a lot of corporates who also, want to get into the PE space, and I think I haven't had this many calls from this many executives in a very long time. It reminds me of GFC, post GFC. Same sort of thing.
It's interesting you say people wanting to get into the PE space. I mean, I guess there is an awful lot of capital around. That's a discussion for another day, but there's no doubt about that. All right, well, look, we'll bring Bryan back, and we might just have a look at cut 3.
There are rich teams and there are poor teams. Then there's 50 feet of crap, and then there's us.
Does that situation look familiar, Bryan?
Yeah, that's definitely me. Well, not that I get compared to Brad. Is it Brad Pitt? Yeah, Brad Pitt very often. But yes,
I guess I'd like to start off by wondering where the engagements come from. I suppose, Bryan, in your case, you're asked to maybe have a look at a distress situation. I know, I've got a story myself. We had a client that was actually funded by an offshore private equity group. And the local execs were absolutely hopeless, in my view. And we actually got some local accountants to go and have a look. And I said to them, look, you're doing an IA for me, but we're also going to present this to the PE guys offshore, because they really, they're going to do their dough if they don't change the team. Are they the sorts of, how do you get involved in changing executive teams when you come in from, as I guess, the health checker?
Yeah, it's there's an interesting spectrum you have to work along there, Nick. From one end, where I'm, given some sort of official appointment and effectively given all of the power and control to make the changes, which is clearly very easy in that circumstance. You go in and you cut where needed, rather ruthlessly, but in the interests of the overall entity and everybody else's jobs. To where you're brought in really to advise and assist a team that clearly isn't up to speed, and then how do you initiate change in that circumstance, which is a hell of a lot more difficult because particularly in the current market, because nobody wants to get out of a job when it's going to be so hard to get into a job. So the resistance is high, and you just got to make sure, as you said, you get to the actual decision makers, the people who control the money and have the ability to make the change, to show them why it's got to occur.
And does that? I guess going in from that, Deanne, how does your brief change? Are you briefed by shareholders, by the board, or by the executive team, and how does that change the way you go about doing your job?
Usually, as I said, I deal particularly in the PE space. So you've got the PE fund who's just looking at an investee company. So they've got a portfolio company. Usually, when they're in the middle of the deal, I know we've got a 100 mil manufacturer or a whatever it is that we're looking for. When the deal's done, I'm running. I've got as quickly as I possibly can to get, usually the CEO is the first one that goes in. Often, if you've just got a PE funds bought in, the people who got you there and got into the problem are not going to be the ones to solve it. So right. So I've got the brief. Find the one who has, got the business acumen, the people leadership, the industry background, and the experience to do the turnaround. And from there, we then look into the functional roles below that.
I'm just interested, Bryan, in how you have the conversations. If you're brought in by the CEO, or sometimes you might be brought in by the bank, I suppose. I mean, how do you have that conversation with the CEO? That, let's say, the founding CEO. Say it's a founding director that's been their baby for maybe 5 years. They've brought the business up to a certain level. Maybe you want to keep them on because they've got a good Rolodex and they may be really good at sales, but they're just rubbish at everything else.
Okay, you've hit a couple of different points there that I'll address. I'll come back to your founder one because that is quite interesting, and I've encountered that many times over my career. But often I'm brought in from the board level, so the board will bring me in, and it's very helpful. The higher up the chain you are that you get brought in, the more clout you have to deal with the issues. So, and then it's a case of going in and doing the appropriate assessment of the parties. But I totally agree with Deanne that 99 out of 100 times the group that got them to that circumstance where they're consulting with me are not going to be the group that's going to get them out of it.
I'll just stop you there for a second because we do have some footage of you. It's cut to footage of you going into an engagement and just cleaning out the existing team.
Jesse, how have you been? I've been great. I'm back, and you're fired.
Was that you?
The less subtle version, in a way. But when I'm doing this, I do like to say I am very sympathetic and empathetic to the circumstances of the parties on the other side, because I realise, that it's often not from a lack of significant effort and a lot of stress on their part that they're in that circumstance, and that there's nothing good about what's then going to transpire. But so. Although, it's easy to make videos like that one, which sort of does summarise it too well. The founders, look, I call them the crazy inventors because often that's been the case. They're the inventors or the brainstorm behind the brilliant idea that's got whatever the business is up and running. And sometimes, they've actually had some very good ideas, but they are often not the party to take it and commercialize the idea going forward. And sidelining them, I'm probably on a 50-50 return rate on that one. To be completely honest with you, it is, they have to, often because they do control a massive amount of the ownership. And they live and breathe it. That's their baby. So convincing them that they are not the right person to take it forward is never an easy task. So don't ever underestimate that one.
That's one of the real challenges, isn't it? In the sort of middle market or the small and medium space. It's one thing to come into Virgin or into a large publicly listed company and just wipe the board out and start again. But when the board is the she or he who started the business, it's a different proposition, isn't it?
Yeah, I often say, Nick, that the larger the corporate that I'm dealing with, it's usually much easier. They're more sophisticated at every level, including the senior management teams. They know, they understand what's going on in so many ways. They've seen it all. They realise their shortcomings often as well, and they don't want to hear them, but necessarily that they're not fools.
And Deanne, have you got anything to add to that on the sort of founder problem?
Yeah, I Bryan, I feel for you, particularly those founders, as you say, who put their life and soul into it. It's another one of their children. Very often they've spent their life for it, working for this company, and missed out on kids and wives and all sorts of occasions, and they've put their business first, and now they're told, no thanks, we don't need you anymore. I think one of the things that, I come from a counselling background, so one of the things I think it's really important then is to be able to, deal with them heart to heart and, go back to what it is that, why they started this and what it is that they really wanted to achieve. And it's often a case of, well, I wanted to be able to, look after my wife and have a nice life when we're older, and, reminding them of that and getting them out to that and giving them the option that, you can get there is sometimes makes it a little bit easier if you can start looking at another vision and going back to where they started.
I was listening to something, podcast this morning, and they were saying you've got to have the right balance of empathy. If you've got too much empathy, you're not going to be making decisions for the right purpose. If you don't have any empathy, of course, you're a sociopath, and that's a problem as well. Just sort of moving on to the kind of characteristics that that you look for in a special sit. Say, are you looking for track record? Is it Rolodex? Is it industry vertical experience? What's the normal brief you get?
Yes, it's all of those things. Fundamentally, what you're looking for is ideally a CEO who's done it before, because, special sits, you can't have a first-time CEO, or if you do, they've got to be something pretty amazing out of the box. Fundamentally, you've got to have somebody who is really, really knows their numbers and is data-driven decision-making, because yes, you've got to have extraordinary people leadership, because what you're trying to do is to, increase productivity 30%, not reduce or will take cost out 30%. You've got to be doing both, and you've got to be taking the good people with you. So I always say that what I'm looking for is somebody who's got a head for business and a heart for the people. So you've got to have both. You've got to have energy. There's also got to be, I kind of look for head, heart, and the other part. And the other part is the courage piece, because turnaround special is tough stuff. You've got a PE fund who's looking to, do at least 3 times money in 3 years. I mean, it may not be quite the case post COVID, but you're looking for them to come up with a business that is worth significantly more in a very short period of time, which means you've got to have every single piece working, whether that's, your sales and marketing, your operating systems, all that. But also now what you're needing is somebody who has the ability to bring the IT, the innovation, the digital piece, the thinking from other industries into this industry, new ideas. Because so what we really are looking for is really the cream of the cream to be the CEOs and PE.
Look, I'll ask you in a minute about how I get myself on that shortlist. But what do you think, Bryan, when it comes to finding the right person?
Look, because it's never a perfect world, particularly when I'm walking in assisting, either formally or informally. So it's usually a blend that, there's a lot of intellectual property that I don't want to lose within the organisation that can be critical. So, selecting those that are going to be of assistance in that, and then trying to supplement it with clearly where the missing holes are. And at first step, that's ordinarily where my team and I will step in and, make the more data-driven, difficult calls, point out the, those issues. I was having this discussion over lunch with a friend of mine recently. As I get older, it seems to be getting easier to have those more robust conversations, but doing it in a nice manner.
Yeah.
But, the reality is the conversations have to be had, and not doing anybody any favors by not holding them, let alone the person, least of all the party that you need to be holding that conversation with. So having those discussions about performance and what needs to be done, and bringing everybody along on that journey, and people will then come to the realization that they're going to work or they're not. So yeah, it's a blend of things. As I said, sometimes I try and keep as many as I can within there, noting, of course, earlier comments by Deanne and myself that most of that team is probably going to be replaced.
I've got another clip here of someone, a famous CEO, bringing in other outsiders. Clip 1.
We're putting the band back together.
Forget it. No way. We're on a mission from God.
Deanne, what do you ever recruit on the basis that that you're bringing in a person and they can bring in other people around them as well? Is that ever part of it?
Yeah. I particularly going to Bryan was saying earlier, you want somebody who's they've already done a lot of the tough stuff, and that's often the way. If I'm going to be bringing somebody in, often they might be 3 months, after the acquisition. So a lot of the really tough stuff, getting out of leases, fixing banks, doing all that sort of stuff has been done. But really what you're looking for is the rebuild. So you've got you want somebody who ideally has been in this industry before, has got the runs on the board. They know the way this industry works. They know the way that particular market is. Ideally, they've done PE before, so they, PE can be tough taskmasters. You don't want them to be doing that for the first time, ideally. And the thing is also, when they come from that particular market, they know who the players are. It's not going to take them 6 months to get the runs on the board. They already know who's who in the zoo and the way that it's going to work. And often, yes, you're going to have functional heads who they're comfortable with, whether it's a COO or the salesperson or whatever. Really, though, what you're looking for is the team that together. I mean, it's that classic case of what do we really need? What's the vision? What's the strategy that we're going after? Who are the people? What are the spots that we've got? And the gap analysis, go find them. I know, interestingly enough, at a PE conference in New York a couple of years ago, one of the partners of, I think it was General Atlantic, 34 billion assets under management, and they had done a review of 10 years of their portfolio companies. And they said when they changed over CEO, and usually about 60% of the exec team within the first year, they made, on average, 3 times better return than if they waited till second or third year.
Is that right? Yeah, so cut early and cut often, but interesting. Okay, well, look. Let's say I'll ask this first to Bryan, and then I'll come to you, Deanne. I was saying a bit earlier, I've seen scenarios where people have looked at M&A deals that are also turnarounds. So it's an M&A and a turnaround, and they've said, "Listen, we'll be happy to outlay the 10 million or 20 million, whatever it is, to buy this business. But we're only going to do it if we can get the right CEO going in. We're not going to buy it and then try and find the right person." And they've found the person. They know who it is, and it might be, someone who, some talented person in one of the accounting firms or something. That they go and they've approached the person, and they say, "Listen, I'm already getting paid plenty of money. My wife's just had a baby." How do you go about prizing them away from those cushy roles to take on, to get involved in something that's a mess, albeit there might be upside? How do you sort of have that conversation?
This is one for Deanne. It's sell the dream, isn't it? But it's also remuneration packages. Ultimately, that you give them some skin in the game. You give them some, where they can truly see themselves benefiting from their performance in a way that's more substantial than they're going to get in the current. And also, hopefully, if it is the right person, you're appealing to their desire for further growth. This is really a step in your career that's going to lift you again and take you much further to better places. So I don't know. There's a combination, I think, around those.
I must admit that sometimes if you've got to woo somebody too much, it's a bit of a worry as well.
Yeah.
They've got to want it. What do you think, Deanne? I mean, I'm sure you must have had many a time when you've had to prize someone away from the warm, cozy position that they're in.
Absolutely, and I couldn't agree with Bryan more. I mean, money is always a big factor. If PE boys are trying to get a corporate person, that's almost an easy. It's almost an easy pitch,
Right?
Because what you're talking with a corporate is. It can be very structured. It can be, you're having to deal with the governance of an ASX or something, which I don't know that there's any CEO out there who enjoys that. You've got all the shareholder, roadshows, all that sort of stuff. Not as exciting. When you're doing turnaround PE stuff, you're working incredibly closely with some of the smartest minds in the Australian business place. There is that significant growth that Bryan spoke about, but also it's exciting. I mean, you're working in businesses, and it's up to you to change them. It's up to you to make a difference. One of the things, just to go on this one, one person, one leader. I always think about this when this is my big why. When you're putting in the wrong leader, people aren't seen, they're not heard, businesses go down, businesses fail. When you put the right leader in, people are seen, they're heard, and they feel good about themselves. Now, one person impacts 70 people, whether that's family, friends, people in their street, neighbourhood, whatever. So if you've got 100 people that you're responsible for as CEO, there's 7,000 people who are affected by how you turn up every day.
Yeah.
So often, if you're thinking about the bigger picture and the impact that you can have on that business, that's where you get them excited. It's about, what is it that you really want to do, and what's your legacy? And this is where they can really get it.
Yeah, look, I mean, we could talk all about, particularly getting people out of those corporate environments. So I think you can be in a corporate environment for too long, but that's a discussion for another day, because I think you lose a bit of match fitness there. So one thing I really do want to get to, and I'll start with you, Deanne, and then I'll come to you, Bryan, is okay, I've built up my CV. I fancy myself as a bit of an interim CEO. How do I get a gig? What have I got to do?
Well, at the end of the day, there are people like me who specialise in that space, and I always like to, with my candidates, any candidate in the first hour will tell you what they've done and how good they are. You want to have the next half-hour conversation, which is who they are, what's really important to them. And when you've got that, candidates, recruiters like me will put you up. It's all through networks. It's all through, getting in front of those people, getting in front of your contacts who are in the PE space, going to conferences, going to, things like this, so that you understand what's going on in this space. If you haven't done it before and you want to know who the players are, then Hermes Capital lunch money is a great place to start.
Yeah, well, we certainly try and get across the sector. Well, what do you think, Bryan? I'm sure in your role you must, like me, I get phone calls all the time. People saying, or people contact me on LinkedIn and say, "Listen, I'm out of work. Have you got any interim roles for me?" Do you get that call?
Yeah, I get that often as well. So lots of people approach me to say, I'm currently looking for something, my skill set. So networks are obviously very important. You've worked with people, you've seen what they can do, and you can assess where they come from there. Yeah, I'm probably the opposite end to Deanne. She's putting them in, I'm taking them out. So.
And when we were talking a little bit before we came on, mentoring. You get involved in a fair bit of mentoring, Bryan?
Yeah, I mentioned to Nick earlier, Deanne, that it seems to be coming with age. The older you get, it seems to just gravitate towards you. People seem to look at you as a mentor, which is quite strange sometimes. Why would they think that? But yes, it is happening more and more and more. And, I often find some of my roles are almost just hand-holding the CEO and, giving them confidence that they're making the right decisions, that they're communicating messages correctly, just as a sounding board, because, it can be a very lonely position at the top. And having people that you trust that you can just run ideas past. And I've said it all through my career, often the process of articulating a problem, you solve it in your own mind. You already have the answer 9 out of 10 times. You know where you should go, but it's just that I certainly find articulating it helps me a lot, and it seems to help a lot of others. So, so that's sort of where the mentoring sort of comes in a lot.
And Deanne, I'm just wondering, do you ever sort of put a CEO into a position and say, look, we'll put Sue or Fred into this role, and just we'll give them a set of training wheels, and we'll have a mentor, whether it's Bryan or someone like that. So we'll give them some mentorship. Is that something that happens?
Yeah, so certainly as one of the value adds that I do in my business is I give 12 months coaching.
Right.
So I put the executive in, and then I'm there as the backup, if you like.
Yeah.
So it's a monthly call for the next 12 months to make sure that they're being focused not only on the targets that the owners have set, but also that they're okay emotionally, because as Bryan said, it's lonely at the top. So to have somebody who is only interested in their well-being and their success, I'm there just to make sure that they're okay, head, heart, and business-wise.
Because the other thing I'd add is that it's a whole different line of discussion as well, but having the right board supporting them, because again, if you've got a good chairman that's in a constructively constructively reviewing, but being of assistance, that can help a lot to a managing director. And so having that additional support that can be really important. Make sure you get your board right.
If the board's big enough and there's a good chair, the chair sort of can play that mentoring type role. It's interesting you say it's lonely at the top. I've said I must be at the top because it's awfully bloody lonely. You don't when you get to a certain position, you don't want to. You want to be careful who you ask for advice. You don't want to show weakness and all of those things. So I think it is very important to have someone. It's interesting that you provide that.
Nick, I must be older than you then, mate, because I'm starting to give up on that now. I'm just telling it the way it is. I don't care anymore. See my weaknesses. I don't care.
So you're sort of in your dressing gown and yelling, "Get off my lawn," all that sort of stuff.
Not quite that bad, no.
All right. Well, look, unbelievably, we're actually we're out of time. It's been a really fun discussion and very interesting, and it's been a great perspective on the special situation. I'll ask you, any sort of final thoughts you'd like to throw in?
No, just everybody look after yourself and look after the people around you. All the stuff about mental health right now. Just take care of each other.
Yeah, and I'll add to that. I'm a big believer in staying as physically healthy as I possibly can. That helps my mental health as well. So Absolutely. If it's just about money, put it in perspective.
Yeah. Fantastic. Great advice. All right. Well, look, on that note, again, I've really enjoyed today. It was fantastic. Really enjoyed having you both. It was a really interesting discussion. And thank you very much to all of our viewers. And just a reminder that you can listen to us on your favourite podcasting platform or watch us again on YouTube. So thank you very much, Deanne and Bryan, and see you later. Cheers.